You know that feeling when you look up at the night sky and just wonder? It's that simple but really powerful curiosity that kicks off every single great discovery. Well, today, we're going to go on a similar exploration. But instead of the cosmos, our universe is the world of learning. So let's get started. I mean, it's pretty amazing, right? A single line from a nursery rhyme we all grew up with, and it perfectly nails what drives all research. See, it's not really about having all the answers right away. It's about being completely fascinated by the questions. That's the spark, you know? It's what gets every scientist, every artist, every single explorer out of bed in the morning. Okay, so that's the big question for us today, isn't it? How do we take that pure, raw wonder and actually turn it into something useful? A real systematic way to understand and, most importantly, improve education for everyone. It's really about building a bridge from just wondering to actually knowing. All right, so for any journey, you need a starting point, right? Every explorer needs that one star in the sky to guide them. And for us, that guiding star is the whole idea of educational research itself. So what exactly is it? Well, when you boil it all down, educational research is basically a structured quest for answers. It's a scientific way of gathering up information and figuring out what it all means so we can solve real problems in education. We're talking everything from what works best in the classroom to big nationwide policies. But the end goal, it's always, always about making things better. Okay, think about an explorer in a new land. What's the first thing they do? They map it out, right? They count things, measure things. Well, in research, that's exactly what we do too. We gather data we can actually measure. So let's check out the first major tool in our explorer's kit. And this is what we call quantitative research. The best way to think about it, it's our telescope. It lets us look at the big picture, see things from a distance, and find patterns using numbers and stats. It's the tool that answers questions like, how many students passed? Or how much did scores improve? So when we look through this telescope, what do we actually see? Well, we see the hard data. We can find the center of that data using things like the mean, that's just the average score, or the median, which is the number smack dab in the middle. We can even spot the most common result, which we call the mode. And super importantly, it helps us see correlations, like, hey, do more study hours actually lead to higher test scores? And this is where it gets really powerful. When you visualize that data, it just clicks. Look at this simple chart of student scores. You can see instantly where most students are doing well and where they might need a little more help. Here, it's pretty obvious that the biggest group of students scored between 10 and 20 marks. That right there, that's quantitative research in a nutshell, turning a bunch of numbers into a picture that actually tells the story. But here's the thing. Just counting the stars only gets you so far, right? To really get what's going on in the cosmos, you need to understand the stories behind all that light. And for that, we need a totally different kind of tool. And that brings us to qualitative research. So if quantitative research was our telescope, think of this as our explorer's diary or logbook. This isn't about numbers at all. It's all about stories, experiences, and the context of it all. This is where we write down the why and the how behind everything we're seeing. So how do we fill up the pages of this diary? Well, we do it by talking to people in deep interviews, really listening to their stories. We do it through observation, just watching how things unfold naturally. Or we might do a case study, which is like a super deep dive on one particular person or situation. The whole point is to get those rich, detailed human stories. So let's just put them side by side for a second. Our telescope, quantitative, is asking what and how many. But our diary, qualitative, is asking why and how. One gives you hard numbers and measurements. The other gives you meaning and context. And here's the key. A really great explorer knows you absolutely need both to get the full picture. Okay, so we've looked through our telescope and we've written in our diary, we've observed, we've recorded, but what if our explorer gets an idea, a theory? What if they want to see what happens if they actually change something? Well, for that, you need a whole other setup. And this is where we enter the laboratory. Welcome to experimental research. In the lab, we're not just passive observers anymore. Oh no, we are actively interacting with the world. The whole goal here is to figure out cause and effect. You deliberately change one little thing just to see what kind of ripple effect it has on something else. Now, this whole process has to be super disciplined. First, you set up a controlled environment.
Then you introduce one specific change, let's say a brand new teaching method for one group of students. And finally, you measure everything to see if that one change actually caused a difference in their scores. This is the real magic, you know? It's how we go from just seeing a connection to proving that one thing causes another.
But hey, the toolkit doesn't even stop there. We've also got historical maps. And that's historical research. It's about looking back, digging through old documents and records to figure out how we even got here in the first place. Because let's be real, you can't really know where you're going if you don't understand where you've been. So let's recap. We've got our telescope for the big picture, our diary for the deep stories, our lab for testing ideas, and our historical maps for context. The big question is, how do we use all of these things together on our quest for knowledge? And honestly, if you take one thing away from all this, let it be this. The best explorers, the ones who make the biggest discoveries, don't just stick to one tool. They know how to use everything in their kit. When you combine the what from the numbers with the why from the stories, that's when you get that rich 3D picture of what's really going on. But no matter what tool our explorer picks up, they have to follow a strict code of conduct. These are the non-negotiables. We're talking about ethics, always protecting the people involved, being honest, getting consent. We're talking about validity, making sure you're actually measuring what you claim to be measuring. And reliability, ensuring that your methods are consistent, that someone else could come along and get similar results. This code, it's the bedrock of any research you can actually trust. And that brings us right back to where we started, with wonder. So now that you've had a quick tour of the Explorer's Toolkit, I'm turning the question over to you. In this massive, amazing universe of learning and education, what's the one star that you wonder about the most? What's the question that you'd love to explore?